And welcome to The Watchman. I like to say that Christians United for Israel exists for such a time as this. It is not by coincidence that at this very moment in history, when Israel is surrounded by enemies on all sides, God Almighty has raised up an army of 3.3 million Bible-believing Christians across America to stand with Israel and the Jewish people. Because if not us, who? And if not now, when? CUFI is now America's largest pro-Israel organization, and we are not shy about making our voices heard when God's land and God's people are threatened. So, when a shameful anti-Israel resolution was passed at the UN, a resolution, by the way, that President Obama allowed to pass, we went into action immediately. Earlier this month, 260 pastors, led by CUFI's founder, Pastor John Hagee, traveled to Washington, D.C. to send a message to the UN and our government that for Zion's sake, we will not remain silent. CUFI members spread out across Capitol Hill to lobby members of Congress, and we had three main objectives. Number one, to support legislation calling for the complete repeal of that wicked UN resolution that I mentioned. A resolution that calls the Western Wall and the Temple Mount in Jerusalem illegally occupied territory. Illegally occupied, the UN says, by Israel. This is like saying the Great Wall is occupied by China or London is illegally occupied by the Brits. It's madness. The second reason our CUFI contingent stormed Washington was to make clear that we support the Trump administration's plan to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, where it belongs. And number three, we came to Washington to support the nomination of David Friedman, a good and honorable man, as the new U.S. ambassador to Israel. It all added up to an historic couple of days in our nation's capital. Take a look.
Mr. Prime Minister, Christians United for Israel has answered the call tonight. All 3.3 million of us stand with you and stand with Israel and stand with the Jewish people.
If there had been a CUFI, there had never been the first Holocaust. Because you would have woke up Washington. You would have been up here, and there would not have been the slaughter of the Jewish people.
It is a great day when we have the opportunity to reaffirm the decades-long, deeply bipartisan support for Israel that has sustained the strength and reach and depth of the U.S.-Israel relationship.
This resolution is a gift to every anti-Semite on planet Earth. That's why we are here to fight it and to stop it.
We need foot soldiers in this coming battle. And if you love America, which all of you do, then you need to fight for Israel. Because if you don't fight for Israel, God's not going to fight for us. Thank you.
Folks, what a powerful and anointed time we had right here in Washington, D.C. You know, in the book of Isaiah, God Almighty says, "On your walls, O Jerusalem, I have set watchmen day and night who will never hold their peace." At Christians United for Israel, we are playing that role of watchmen and watchwomen on the wall, standing in the gap for Israel. You need to be a part of this movement, folks. Join this mighty movement of God. You see the URL on your screen. You see the phone number. Call us. Visit CUFI.org and be a part of something special, a true mighty move of God. And a move of God where we're getting to stand shoulder to shoulder with men like Malcolm Hoenlein. Malcolm is a great friend of CUFI, and he's the executive vice chairman of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. Now, he's arguably the most influential American Jewish leader, a man who meets with world leaders like Benjamin Netanyahu on a regular basis. So we were privileged to sit down with him recently to discuss what lies ahead for Israel and America in 2017. Fascinating stuff. Take a look. It seems to be a tendency in the West among some Western leaders to think, well, the Iran deal solved the problem, the Iran nuclear deal. Tell our audience why Iran is not just a continuing threat for Israel in the region, but for America and the world.
America is the big Satan to Iran. Israel's the little Satan. And a lot of what Iran is doing is targeting the West, in Europe and the United States. They're building ballistic missiles not to hit Israel, because they can hit them with Scud missiles. They're doing it because they want to hit the United States. And they say it. And the problem is that people don't listen. Dictators tell the truth. Leaders of democracy sometimes lie, but dictators tell the truth, and they're telling us what they want to do. Look at what they're telling us in the Navy, building new bases, expanding their footprint in the region, controlling 4 Arab capitals, Baghdad, Sana'a, Beirut, Damascus. Look at what they're doing in terms of their support for terrorism, Hamas, Hezbollah, terrorism in Africa, in South America, 50,000 agents in South America, from Mexico to Argentina, because they can fight us from across our border and not from thousands of miles away.
Yeah, you hear so much, Malcolm, about ISIS in the West, but Iran at our doorstep in South America.
Iran with Hezbollah, training people, building bases, training terrorists, and infiltrating people. These are real serious issues, and this is not me. This is the FBI has said this. There's other security agencies. There are people who are studying this with great alarm. Then you look at what are their activities, and I haven't touched on the nuclear. I'm talking about on non-nuclear threats, support for global terrorism, violation of human rights of their own people, more executions now than under Ahmadinejad. Rouhani, the quote moderate,
the great moderate,
executing Christians, Baha'is, Muslims, anybody that doesn't agree, political opponents. You see that the opposition and the actions against any potential opposition, but also against young people, arrests of college students. The economic conditions are terrible within the country because the Khamenei, the supreme leader, and his house and the Iran Revolutionary Guard control 30 to 40% of the economy. So the billions that they have taken in because of the JCPOA doesn't benefit the people. Then you come to their conventional outreach. They're building their own. They're threatening our ships in the Straits of Hormuz. They have now their destroyers in the Mount Bab al-Mandab. And I suggest that everyone just go look at a map. These are the 2 choke points. Everything coming from the Suez Canal, the Persian Gulf, the Red Sea, and they said it, that we will choke the West by controlling these 2 points. Now they announce that their destroyers are there. They're not there to protect their ships against pirates. They're there because that's what the war in Yemen is about. That's what one of their goals. Then they harass our ships. These little boats come and wreak havoc. We don't know if they're loaded with explosives. And they humiliate our soldiers by capturing them. Why did we not respond? They shoot missiles in violation of and are advancing their ballistic missile capacity. It's a violation of Security Council resolution, and they get away with it. They keep probing, and now we still have not talked about their nuclear program. We're talking about all the things beyond the things covered in the JCPOA. So you can't trust them. We know they're violating, and they're slapping the West in the face all the time, and especially the United States. And if we fail to put the markers down clearly, they take advantage of it. When they perceive weakness, they exploit it. That's been true throughout history, how terrorists operate and how dictators operate, and it is true today. And we are feeding them. We're feeding them Baghdad. You know, they're replacing the Sunni population in Syria with Shiites from Iraq and from Afghanistan and elsewhere. I mean, they're trying to impose permanent changes. And with Hezbollah, look at the dominant role today they play in Syria.
Talk about that Hezbollah threat at Israel's northern border, Malcolm. You mentioned Hezbollah in South America, but tens of thousands of rockets and missiles aimed at every inch of Israel. Talk about that a bit, the threat they pose.
Right. So first, overall, you're right. They have a network of terrorist operations. Hamas, they have reestablished ties. They provide them with missile technology. You know how we know? Because they said it. They declared it. They said we have reestablished the ties. We are helping them advance technologically and otherwise the missiles that Hamas operating Al-Gaza has against Israel, against Egypt, potentially against Saudi Arabia and Jordan. Then you go to the north. And Hezbollah is operating today in dozens of countries, but their base is Lebanon. And we've given them Lebanon. In the election of Aoun, a Christian who used to be a great ally, who turned then and switched to Hezbollah, is now the president. Hezbollah has 10,000 troops in Syria. They've built up their capacity. They've gotten many more weapons, much of it American-supplied weapons to rebel groups and the Free Syrian Army and others who had these weapons that have all now gone to that were captured by Hezbollah and other groups.
And they're getting that battlefield experience in Syria.
And exactly, that this is not the Hezbollah of our fathers. This is a Hezbollah that's been in the field, had many people killed, but is battle trained. They have built infrastructure, underground infrastructure all over southern Lebanon, and now we know that they're doing some inside Syria, but more importantly that they are building their infrastructure and capacity. That one day they may decide, that Assad says the way I'm going to unify everybody is start up with Israel. That's why Israel had to react and has to react so strongly to every provocation to send a message, don't mess with us.
Coming up, more with Malcolm Hoenlein on the threats gathering against Israel and America and what it all means for you. It's The Watchman. It's Christians United for Israel, only right here on TBN. Don't move.